Welcome to our SPE Geothermal Datathon Bootcamp. My name is Mei Song Yan. I'm the Reservoir Engineering Consultant and the moderator for this live session of the Bootcamp. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Silviu Livescu. Dr. Livescu is passionate about the multidisciplinary innovation, research, and technology development. He has made a significant contribution in the field of intellectual properties and management. He has authored more than 38 US patents and published over 80 papers and articles. In recognition of his expertise, Dr. Livescu was appointed as the Data Science and Engineering Analytic Technical Director on the Society of Petroleum Engineers. He is SPE's distinguished lecturer in the past. In addition to his SPE roles, Dr. Livescu is also the executive editor of Journal of Petroleum Science and Engineering. Currently, Dr. Livescu is working at UT Austin. So Dr. Livescu, welcome to this SPE Live Bootcamp.
All right, thank you, Mei Song. Hello, everyone. The presentation is recorded and you are going to see it on YouTube after this. It's really a geothermal 101 for those of you who still wonder what geothermal energy is about. We are going to have more bootcamps later this week, including another one on geothermal, but also about the data at the US Forge, Utah Forge project that you are going to use for this Datathon. So a few other things about myself after Mei Song's introduction. I wasn't aware she was going to introduce me, so thank you again, Mei Song, for that. So I have experience in the oil and gas industry, a lot of production engineering and some completion, some drilling, a lot of data science. And so everything is about how to produce more oil and cheaper and more sustainable. In the last 3 years, I also got interested in geothermal and other energy transition topics. But now I'm 100%. I'm spending my time 100% into geothermal, and that again implies pretty much everything related to well engineering. I was affiliated with ExxonMobil, Baker Hughes as the chief scientist, pressure pumping chief scientist, and now at UT I'm teaching classes on geothermal and data science, machine learning. I have many hats in SPE, and for those of you who are not SPE members, I just want to say very briefly that SPE it's a largest organization for professionals in the oil and gas energy industry, and it's a great organization, and I'm strongly encouraging all of you to who are not members to become members. It's an absolutely amazing society. I'm privileged to serve as the 2020-2023 Data Science and Engineering Analytics Technical Director on the SPE board, and I have many other hats for many committees and many other activities in SPE, including as a co-chair for the Energy Transition Symposium that we're organizing in August 2023. And so if you have any questions about any of these and what I'm going to talk today, please just Google me on, search for me on LinkedIn, and you can send me any questions you may have. In addition, please feel free now to write any questions you may have for me in the chat, and Mei Song will pass those to me. I'm on a full screen here, so I presentation mode on PowerPoint, so I don't see anything coming in the chat. So before I start, I want to say that this is our 5th geothermal datathon organized through SPE. I'm absolutely proud of the teams organizing these events in the past. The first one was organized between the Calgary section and the Gulf Coast section, two of the largest SPE sections in the world. And so that was in 2021. And in parallel, in 2021, we had another one organized in Europe by 4 European sections: Italian, London, Netherlands, and Romanian. And then last year, for the Pivot 2022 Geothermal virtual conference, we organized the first Utah Forge SPE Datathon. And so last year also, the European Datathon expanded. They attracted 2 more sections in addition to the original 4th one, so the Copenhagen and the Geothermal technical section. And they had another really great event. So this is the 5th Datathon. I'm absolutely happy by how much momentum we are getting and how much interest is out there. So I hope all of you will find this experience useful. So now let's talk about 101 for geothermal. And so my goal today is not to talk about Forge mostly, but to talk about geothermal in general and to explain to you, to explain to you what is geothermal and what we can do with geothermal. So these kind of pictures, I'm sure you can find them in many books nowadays. You find them on the internet. The 3 pictures from the left. And so all of them describe the geothermal energy as the energy contained within the Earth crust, mantle, and core. And so it's essentially heat within Earth. And so what happens is that from the surface, the temperature keeps increasing all the way to the center of our planet, to the core, such that at the very core of our planet, the temperature is very similar to the temperature of the sun. It's about close to 6,000 degrees Celsius. It's quite hot down there, and so closer to the surface, the temperature is not as hot. However, within 10-20 kilometers, and this depends on the source. The geothermal gradient it varies with location, but we can reach temperatures hot enough at 10-20 kilometers that we can produce a lot of heat for the purpose of power generation. And so most of the discussions nowadays in the geothermal community are about power generation from geothermal resources. However, if we don't drill that deep, if we drill only to 1,000 feet or probably 2,000 feet, we can produce heat directly and use it directly for a lot of other purposes, like you are going to see later. And so already I gave you a flavor about what geothermal energy is. It's heat that can be produced for direct heating applications on the surface or for power generation. And so just to give you a sense of the scale of the energy stored in our Earth, here the picture on the right is the fossil fuels contain about 630 zetajoules of energy. And then the nuclear fusion materials contain about 360,000 zetajoules. And so all this thermal crustal energy is about 15 million zetajoules. So the orders of magnitude are absolutely incredible. So just to make sure that, again, at the very high level 101 kind of presentation, I have a few facts here that I want you to remain with. So geothermal comes from the Greek words geo and therm, meaning earth and heat. And so this just tells you how long the geothermal energy has been used. So it has it has Greek connotation. And so 99% of the Earth is hotter than 1,000 degrees, and only 0.1% is colder than 100 degrees. And you are going to see what these temperatures are. The average temperature of Earth's surface is about 14 degrees, and this varies because of the weather, on location, and so on. And so from those 14 degrees on the surface, the temperature keeps increasing all the way to close to 6,000 degrees at the core. Now, I already made the case that geothermal energy it's used for both power generation and for direct heat applications. And so the picture from the left, coming from Think Geoenergy website, shows the top 10 geothermal countries last year. And believe it or not, the United States is the #1. Great, right, in this. But then in this prestigious club, there are other countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Turkey, New Zealand, Mexico, Kenya, Italy, and so on. Iceland, that has 80–90% of the energy coming from geothermal resources, it's so small on the list just because it's a small country. But in terms of percentage-wise, Iceland is the #1 country in the world using geothermal energy. And so on the plot from the right, you see the difference between electrical installations, installed capacity, and thermal installed capacity. These are two different curves for power generation, electrical, and for direct heat applications, thermal. And so both of them are increasing in the last 4 or 5 decades. The thermal one increases way more, and the reason for that is because the technology is available today, as you are going to see later. Now, I talk about applications, and I try to make the case that geothermal can be divided in power generation and direct heating applications, and so that's at a very high level. As you can see on those two figures, the one from the Australian Academy of Sciences on the left, and the other one from the Department of Energy in the United States on the right, there are plenty of applications that the geothermal energy can be used depending on the temperature that is delivered to the surface. And so if we talk about the one from the Department of Energy from the right, this picture shows on the left power generation in terms of direct methods to extract it, and on the left on the right it shows direct use applications. And so again, what I was trying to say is that earlier is that in the geothermal community now, still most of the discussion is about power generation, and these are very well-established concepts that we still need to prove in the field. But on the right, there are so many different flavors of direct heat applications. And so depending on the temperature that we can extract to the surface, we can have geothermal heat pumps, we can have fish farming, we can have all kinds of industrial applications, we can have cement drying, food processing, and even hydrogen production. So the opportunities for using heat directly are absolutely important, and what that means. Well, so first of all, in the geothermal community right now, we have a geothermal industry, just like I show on the plot with the top 10 geothermal producing countries. And so those ones can produce power today. And so they can produce power from existing hydrothermal resources that have a very specific location on the map. And so they have heat, porosity, and brine very close to the surface, so we can extract them commercially. If you look on these maps, so the one from the top left shows in red the locations that are prone today for that kind of hydrothermal resource production. The picture from the bottom left shows the ring of fire. And what is this is actually a tectonically active area around the Pacific Ocean, very well established. It kind of overlaps actually to the picture from the top left. And so these are locations along tectonic plate boundaries where we have those three conditions very close to the surface. And so we can actually extract heat because brine porosity are there. And so the top 10 countries actually extract the geothermal energy from these kind of locations. And so they are very localized on the map. And so the map from the right also shows where the major earthquakes in the last 100 plus years have been. It's a very clear correlation between earthquake activity and the Ring of Fire. Now, in terms of geothermal energy systems, we have many pictures like this. In this, now we can talk about different kinds of systems for extracting the geothermal energy. For instance, the picture from the left shows enhanced geothermal systems, the ones that we are going to deal during this datathon. And these are deep wells, can be an injector and a producer, can be any configuration of wells that are somehow stimulated on the bottom. And they also take advantage of the natural fractures, existing natural fractures. And their purpose is actually to inject brine through the injector, and then the brine flows through the fractures in the rock to take the heat of the rocks and then flow to the producer back to the surface, carrying the heat to the surface. And then from there, just like the current power plants can convert it to electricity, to power, and then the brine is reinjected again. We can have actually the hydrothermal duplet, which essentially also has an injector and a producer. It's not stimulated the same way, probably not necessarily through hydraulic fracturing. The fractures are already there, the brine is already there, and so these are not as deep. The enhanced geothermal systems in this picture can be anywhere 5,000 meters below the surface and more. The hydrothermal doublets are 3,000 meters and so. And then we have deep geothermal probe. We have shallow geothermal probe. We have 2 well systems, and we have the ground heat collectors. All these, and with the different titles, names, are actually shallower. They can go to 1,000, 2,000 meters, and they are drilled on the purpose of harvesting the heat from the underground and being used directly. We can also have different combinations of these, meaning that a system can produce both heat and for direct heating applications and for power generation. So a lot of combinations. Again, we still are developing different kinds of technologies, and Utah Forge is doing just that currently. But what we are after here is that we have so much heat down there, as you saw earlier, and we just need to find the economic ways, commercial ways to produce it for direct heating applications and electricity. But now, talking about how we can do that, there are many maps like this. NREL has been a pioneer, and then we have other places like SMU in Dallas. We have different other national labs from the US and from other countries. But what we are after is that really, if we can drill wells to 5 kilometers and deeper, the temperature in general, no matter where you are in the world, is between 200 and 250 C, and so it's plenty of temperature of heat. And with the current technologies we have today, we can produce economically that heat. We can produce it for power. We can produce it for heat, and so that's absolutely outstanding. So what is missing? Yes, we need to learn how to drill economically. And that's part of what you are trying to do here at this Datathon. Now, another high-level slide I have that I want to make a case for is that the picture from the left shows the carbon emissions by sector. And so you have here energy use in industry, you have transportation, we have energy use in buildings, agriculture, waste, and so on. And so my takeaway from here is that the energy use in buildings is about 17.5%. Transportation is 16.2%. And then energy use in the industry is about 24%. And so if you think about these numbers, so where the carbon emissions come from? Right now, most of our, decarbonization comes from reducing the carbon emissions from the oil and gas industry and from greening transportation, right? So it's a strong push in finding ways to decarbonize the oil and gas industry and from converting transportation to other sources of energy, including power, hydrogen, and so on and so forth. However, buildings actually are responsible for more carbon emissions than the entire transportation sector, and so today they are ready for geothermal heat pumps, for shallow geothermal wells that with today's technology they just need to be deployed at scale. So on one hand, we have the power generation from deep geothermal resources like Utah Forge is trying to do. And I hope that you'll find this Datathon very useful and helping them figure out how to do that more efficiently. And on the other hand, we have a technology that is ready today to decarbonize buildings. Returning to hydrothermal systems that are drilled today for power generation, I want to make a case for the differences between a production well and an injection well in these existing geothermal wells. These are very different than those in oil and gas, and I hope you'll agree with me. The main difference is actually in the size of the borehole. So a producing well in California, let's say, for hydrothermal production, it's about 13 3/8 of an inch. In oil and gas, we drill probably 8.5, 6.5, and then the production tubing can be 4.5, right? So the oil and gas hydrocarbons have so much more energy that with smaller flow rates, we can extract more energy that is cost, is more expensive. So it has a higher margin and supports economic to be produced than producing brine from hydrothermal resources. And this is why we need a lot of brine actually to produce heat. One barrier today to scale up geothermal is there are actually two. So first of all, is the multidisciplinary expertise for a field to be developed, geothermal greenfield to be developed. But also, secondly, is the long time that it takes to develop such a field. And so it depends on the source. It could be, even 6, 7, 8 years now. It depends also on the country. But here is just a slide from Ormat, the largest geothermal company today. That shows you the challenges associated with developing a geothermal greenfield. And so I talk about several different systems, geothermal systems. The first one is the enhanced geothermal systems, and nowadays Utah Forge is the flagship project for such systems. Most of this information I took it from Professor John McLennan from University of Utah. He's a principal investigator for Utah Forge, and so. Please go on Google and Google YouTube and find it. It's absolutely a great presentation that I strongly recommend to everybody. Two points I want to make here. So Utah Forge is not a commercial project. DOE is funding this project for the purpose of researching different oil and gas technologies, different other concepts, bringing together all the national labs and the oil and gas industry to come up with an understanding of enhanced geothermal systems and learning how to make them better. Enhanced geothermal systems are not new. The first one was actually developed at Los Alamos close to 45 years ago or so. So a long history already of enhanced geothermal systems. Probably about 20 projects around the world, mostly in United States. But enhanced geothermal systems is not a new concept. It's just we just need to find ways to make it economical. And part of that narrative on the picture here on the top right, it shows how the injector at Utah Forge was drilled. So they used 42 bottom hole assemblies, and so the first 14 in the vertical section were drilled with roll-on drill bits. So low rate of penetration. And then when they change the drilling bits with whatever the oil and gas industry is using today, the rates of penetration increase significantly. And so they just actually, there are also many SPE papers about this topic. They just change the drill bit and then they just increase the forts, the weight on bit. And so just by doing that, nothing else, they learn already that they can drill much faster and have geothermal systems. Another concept used today by the mostly by the oil and gas industry, veterans from the oil and gas industry, is advanced geothermal systems. This came in many flavors, and there are many startups nowadays pursuing different kind of concepts and technologies. None of them is commercial yet either. So no enhanced geothermal system or no advanced geothermal system concept is commercial today. However, all of them are trying different versions, and at the end of the day, all of them are trying to produce heat commercially, either for power generation or for direct heating applications. And so I really hope that at least some of these startups will be successful. Also, I want to make the point that probably, given the complexity of the energy demand currently, and the entire world, the way it was built on mostly on oil and gas, probably one solution is not going to solve all the problems. So probably we will need different flavors of geothermal systems in different locations for different applications and for different costs as well. Now, talking about advanced geothermal systems, so these are systems that try to produce heat from the subsurface rocks without direct contact between the fluid in the well and in the rock. So somehow in the geothermal community nowadays, you may have heard already about the debates between the conduction heat and convection heat mechanisms for different kinds of systems. While that's very accurate, I think a more useful definition is about enhanced geothermal systems and advanced geothermal systems, in which, just because we have too many geometries and technologies being involved. Some of these advanced geothermal systems are, pipe-in-pipe system, concentric pipes. Some of them are U-shaped wells, and then even the geothermal probes for ground source heat pumps can be considered as advanced geothermal systems. And so I want to make the case again. While enhanced geothermal systems usually are thought about as being drilled very deep and then using stimulation and hydraulic fracturing and such to produce a lot of heat, high volumes of brine, very hard brine, to convert it to power. These advanced geothermal systems can be actually even shallower to produce heat for the purpose of direct heat applications, just like you saw earlier in heating and cooling of buildings, like agriculture and things like that. And so a separate topic, which again doesn't include any of those, is very shallow, wells or other configurations for the purpose of geothermal of heating and cooling of buildings. And so I showed them earlier as a standalone category. I want to talk again about them because there are many flavors of them. This industry has been around for, since 1920s or so. Actually, Boise, Idaho, is the first geothermal system in the United States, and they have, the downtown is powered by geothermal, and it's still going. They have several buildings there, and it's still going, it's still working. So that's a commercial solution. And so, long story short, what happens is that we need to drill deep to drill wells, boreholes, actually. And then we include this kind of U-loop systems inside, through which refrigerant or even just water flows and transfers the heat between the building and the subsurface. Again, there are many flavors of it, a lot of information out there, a lot of research has been put into it. In my class, geothermal class at the University of Texas, I learned that actually in the United States, for instance, the Department of Defense had a lot of systems like this installed, in addition to many, universities, campuses, and things like that. One very famous project is the St. Patrick Cathedral in Manhattan, in which they drilled 10 boreholes between up to 2,200 feet depth, right there in Manhattan, which is actually, I think, an absolutely amazing accomplishment. 2,200 feet vertical boreholes in Manhattan, and so there are many startups following this as well. One of them, a company called Silviu, a startup diverted from Schlumberger, has a configuration like this. Another one, Dandelion Energy, already many of you heard about, and there are many others that are doing similar things and more. And so I talk about whatever it happens underneath in the subsurface, what happens actually on the surface is equally as important, if not more important. When we are using the direct heat applications, we are using the heat as it is, as we extract it from the underground. If we want to convert it to power, it's actually very critical. It's a very critical topic because, we are struggling to drill deeper nowadays, but at the end of the day, the conversion between thermal energy to electricity to power, it's a very inefficient, conversion process. The average conversion depends on location, depends on technology, depends actually on temperature as well. But the average in the world would be about 12%, meaning that only 12% of the thermal energy can be converted to power. And so that's absolutely a topic that it's very interesting. Several startups are actively following that kind of research to figure out how to produce more power given the heat produced to the surface. And so many startups are also talking about using different kind of fluids. So instead of using steam, water, brine, can use supercritical CO2 or any even other fluids. But all of these are topics of active research right now. I hope that more funding will be involved and more research will be done by universities, national labs, companies, and so on. And so I'm getting close to my time here. I also want to mention here the Future of Geothermal in Texas report that we just published in January 2023. Jamie Beard was a co-editor of this, and absolutely amazing work done by Jamie to put together a group of more than 100 professionals, including myself, academics from 5 Texas universities, and a lot of work was put in this. It was peer reviewed. It was a lot of a lot of thinking and research put in it. The report is available for free from the University of Texas at Austin Energy Institute website. You can just Google it. The full report is 358 pages. I invite you all to read it, and I hope you'll find it useful. And then it has a 11-page summary, executive summary for those of you who don't have time to read 358 pages. But we everything I talked today and more is captured there. My technical discipline from SPE, automation, digitalizations, all of these are discussed a lot there as having a lot of potential to help us with geothermal resource exploration and production optimization and predictive analytics for facilities maintenance and things like that. But also I want to mention that last year with Jamie and a colleague of mine from University of Texas, the Bureau of Economic Geology, Dr. Ken Weisian, a former retired general, Department of Defense general, absolutely great people. We conducted a survey of 14 oil and gas companies, a geothermal company, and we came up with a lot of again high level, problem statements about how the oil and gas industry can get involved into the geothermal industry. I encourage all of you to read it, and so just Google and you'll find it. But I'm also available on LinkedIn to answer any questions you may have. And so this is my last slide. Let me summarize the takeaways of my talk here. So first of all, our Earth is hot, right? So the amount of heat energy beneath our feet is estimated to be many thousands of times larger than what we need today on a daily basis to power the world. Geothermal energy is clean, it's renewable and sustainable, and so it's renewable because it's so much out there. It's clean because actually has very little or no CO2 emissions, and it's sustainable because if we learn how to produce it at scale, it's so much there that we can have a very small footprint for how much we can produce. And so the current geothermal industry, which consists mostly on the conventional hydrothermal ground source heat pumps and so on industries, is very small comparing to the oil and gas industry. But the geothermal anywhere concept that Jamie started to talk about in his geothermal in Texas report, this concept is ripe for a massive new geothermal industry, similar to the oil and gas industry, similar in scale. And so it requires a lot of us to be trained, to get on the ground, to brainstorm about how we can produce this massive geothermal resource in a economic way. And so the last bullet, the geothermal resources are everywhere under our feet. And so producing them at scale is probably one of the greatest challenges of our lives. And so we don't have time to innovate in the same way that we innovate in the last 50 years since Los Alamos with the first enhanced geothermal system. We don't have time actually to scale up the geothermal heat pumps in 80 plus years to get where they are now. We need to come up with absolutely no ways to make this happen. And so in my mind, just like my motto in SPE as a technical director is that collaboration and engagement of all of us is critical to scale up geothermal. And so I'm ending up this just to ask you if you are ready. And so that's it for me, very high level. I'm happy to answer any questions now. We have about 20 minutes. And again, if you want to talk about any of these or even more after that, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you for your attention. And now let's see.
Yes, Dr. Livescu, thank you for your presentation. And I Googled and found the link for that, the future of geothermal in Texas 2023, and put that link in the chat area already. So now we're open for the questions. Any questions? Yes, we have one question. Let me see, we have a few questions here, and from Song Chuan, can you share your thoughts on recent advances in research and development of technology to reduce heat loss in the wellbore and the surface pipeline?
I'm sorry, I don't see that. Oh, I see it. Thank you, Maison. So there are many advancements right now. I'm aware of several national labs actually working on different topics. I'm aware of several oil and gas companies working on similar topics. For instance, in the oil and gas industry, we have the pipeline, pipelines that transport gas, the pipelines that transport CO2. We also have the tubulars from, the production tubulars in oil and gas wells. Several companies work on vacuum insulated tubulars, right? So they work with 2 layers of steel having vacuum or other materials in between. So the heat transfer is absolutely something that is very important. But I don't feel at this point we are doing enough research, active research for that. So definitely it's a topic that I have actually personally on my list of things I want to do. When I joined UT, actually, this was one of my proposals for research to open my lab here at UT. I got a very good startup package for that. And so unfortunately, my lab is not ready yet, so I cannot tell you more about it. But yes, it's a great topic of research, and I wish I could see more on it.
Yeah, our next question is from Mohammed. Is one zeta-joule really only 1,000 joule? Then I saw that there's a typo.
Right.
10 over. Okay, so
Yeah,
it is right.
Yeah, so that's address. It's 10 at power 21. Absolutely.
Okay, another question from Rahul. Can you explain once more the basic difference between advanced and enhanced geothermal systems?
I'm sorry, let me see the basic
difference.
Right. So the way they are defined right now, and I don't think even that it's a completely complete definition, is that enhanced geothermal systems allow flow transfer between formation and wells. And so by doing that, the fluid flowing into the well carries the heat by convection. So convection heat transfer is the main mechanism actually to transfer the heat between formation and the well. For advanced geothermal systems, there is no fluid transfer between flow mass between formation and the borehole and the advanced geothermal system. And so because of that, the heat transfer happens by conduction. And then we all know that the heat conduction, it's orders of magnitude smaller than the heat by convection. And so because of that, we need actually much more heat with an advanced geothermal system to produce the same amount of heat to the surface as an enhanced geothermal system. Now, both of them, have advantages and disadvantages, but just like I said earlier, no solution can fit everything.
All right, next question is from Jeff. Where can we find a good summary of past projects in geothermal? What was learned, successes, and failures?
Hi, Jeff. So there are many papers, not as many in SPE literature, but Elsevier, for instance, has a journal called Geothermics, where most of his projects have been described. And then I see a big comment here. And then, Professor Roland Horn at Stanford has been organizing a geothermal workshop for, I don't know, close to 50 years now. All those papers are publicly available. You just go and search. And so all that information is publicly available. I'm not aware of anywhere a paper that describes all the lessons in one place. So that needs to be, probably taken care of by somebody. But all the information is out there. You just need to mine it.
Yes, I just checked the ChatGPT, and that's the comments from ChatGPT, and they refer the AI refer to IEA geothermal implementing agreements, and they have some reports listed there. So if you are interested, just go over there. So AI works in some way. Next question is, what do you think? what do you think of price energy drilling technology? Is this a potential game changer for geothermal?
Huh. I don't want to comment on any particular technology, especially from a fellow startup. I wish them absolutely best of luck, and I really root for them, just like for everybody else. I do feel that we need wins. And so it may come from Quaise, it may come from other startups, but we do need actually them to prove their technologies. And so for that, they have a great concept, like many other startups, but they do need to prove it in the field.
Thank you. And I also put Dr. Silviu Livescu's LinkedIn link in the chat area. So if you are interested, you can click that link. And the next question is from Daisy. Is brine injected into EGS? What's its advantage versus pure water?
Right. So this is a great question, actually. What happens is that probably we start with water, but the amounts of water are absolutely huge. It depends on the depth, of course, and the size of the geothermal resource, right? So we have, in terms of volume of fluids, we have actually a few orders of magnitude more than from oil and gas per the same volume of amount of energy. Now, just imagine that even if we start with fresh water, so pumping fresh water to the injector, that water will flow to the natural fractures or to the fractures into the rock, and so it will pick up whatever whatever is there, and so eventually it won't be pure anymore. And so one of the topics that we have to handle, and I saw very little research about that currently, it's about the geochemistry of the fluid for enhanced geothermal systems. All that geochemistry can affect the corrosion, the flow assurance, topics that in oil and gas we are familiar with, but we don't have any knowledge for this kind of systems because we don't know the geochemistry. We don't even know the type of rocks actually that we are going to fracture through. And so all of these are absolutely a heaven for a researcher. And any company that can come up with, any startup that can come up with, solutions, commercial solutions to these kind of questions will have an advantage.
Thank you. Next question from Abraham. Can you explain what's the main economic feasibility challenges of geothermal wells are? Is it ROP? Is it stuck pipe? And how much is the cutoff in maximum downhole temperature that would make a well feasible for the current conversion efficiency?
Thank you for the question. So the question is a little bit broad. First of all, we have to specify: are we talking here about deeper wells for power generation? Are we talking about shallower wells for direct hit applications? Are we talking about actually very deep wells for hot, dry rocks, or what? So in general, actually, as I said, the narrative nowadays, including through projects like Utah Forge, is that we need to drill deeper or longer if we want to do lateral wells, and hydraulically fracture them for temperatures that are, 250, 300, 350 C. And so those temperatures, we know they're there, we know the heat is there, but sometimes we don't know actually how the rocks behave. We don't know the geomechanics behavior, and we also don't know the states of stress, right? But if we want to do this, if we want to go deeper to those high temperatures, most of the materials, most of the technologies from oil and gas are not currently ready today. So you cannot take, a drilling fluid from off the shelf from the oil and gas that was designed for, behavior at 150, 175 C and take it as it is and just use it to 350 C. You cannot do that with drill bits. We cannot do that with packers. We cannot do that with pretty much anything. And then the way we construct this well in terms of cementing, casing, thermal expansion, elongation, all these are topics that we need to readdress. So we just take our knowledge from oil and gas, and then we go through everything we are using currently in oil and gas, and then we need actually to come up with new concepts, at least test them in the lab right now, and then decide if we need something else, right? And so it's not only the rate of penetration. That's only the first part. But first of all, would be actually where and how to drill wells. So it's the exploration, and then it's the field development, and then it's the drilling. But after drilling is completion, production, all the technical disciplines that we have in oil and gas, all of them. So for instance, right now I still heard very little or at all about artificial lift. Do we even need pumps, for instance, for geothermal wells, especially if they are deeper geothermal wells, right, with a lot of pressure drops? And so the artificial lift, the pumps we're using today in oil and gas, they do have rubber and other temperature sensitive materials and parts. Do we need to redesign completely these ESPs to make them functionable at much higher temperature? So all these are topics that really it's an absolutely amazing broad topic that we need to get together and solve it.
Yes, thank you. Next question from Daisy. What's the bottleneck that limit the conversion factor from geothermal energy to power generation?
So it depends who you ask. In general, if you ask an academic, they will tell you about the Carnot engine, so the theoretical value of converting energy from one thermal to power, right? So because of that, it's a limit. But then you have also startups that are looking into using alternative materials, right? So instead of using turbines, just like very well that steam goes up and then you put a turbine and the steam moves the turbine, and then that turbine eventually will lead into power generation. So that's one way. But then you have all kinds of alternative materials that by being heated they can produce electricity. And so that's a topic of research nowadays. I'm aware of several startups following that concept. I'm not aware of any breakthrough progress yet, but that doesn't mean shouldn't be the end. That shouldn't mean we shouldn't do it. So I'm an advocate of trying all these new topics, and I encourage you again, all of you, to, if you have this kind of questions, to get together and find ways to solve them.
Thank you. Next question from Alfonso. What injection and the production fluid rates are required for commercial enhanced geothermal project?
Thank you for that question. So I don't think it's only one number. I think it depends greatly on the amount of enthalpy at the surface. So it depends actually on the temperature. It depends on the pressure. It depends on the rates, right? It depends on everything. And why pressure, right? So enthalpy doesn't necessarily, enthalpy is directly affected by temperature and rate. Pressure probably doesn't have a strong effect. However, the rate and pressure are correlated. And so pressure is also depending on sustainability, on the long-term production, right, of the project. So all these are related, and I don't think one number hits, it's enough to tell the entire story here. However, what I can tell you is that, again, many companies that are running feasibility studies, they are thinking about 250, 350 C, temperatures at the surface. With the current technology today, with the power generation facilities we have on the surface, probably we can produce economically power at about 200 C. But again, that's not necessarily everywhere. depends on the cost of drilling, depends on the depth we drill, depends on how much water we are losing through the natural fractured network, and how much water we need to replenish and all that kind of thing.
All right. So we only have 3 minutes left. I did not see new questions. Dr. Livescu, thank you for your time and the presentation. And to our audiences, thank you for the questions and the comments. And for joining us today, we have another Advanced Geothermal Bootcamp arranged this coming Friday. See you then. This will end today's bootcamp session. Thank you. And I also put Dr. Silviu Livescu's LinkedIn link in the chat area if you have any questions, or you can connect him at LinkedIn.